Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rafe Mair, former cabinet minister and Canada's #1 longest-running radio talk show host. Welcome to the show, Rafe.
Thanks, Jim. Nice to be here.
The federal election really isn't that far away, and the latest polls still showing the leaders virtually neck and neck with about a third of the popular vote. But how would that translate in reality if they do have a three-way split?
Well, of course, that's always the conundrum in this country. You know, you can take a look, for example, at the United States, and you don't have any trouble translating what the popular vote is into actual seats. But here you just, it's almost impossible to do that. So that the numbers really are misleading and I think meaningless. And when I say meaningless, I mean I don't know what they actually do mean. I'm not suggesting they mean something other than what they're saying. I just don't know. What does this mean in terms of Quebec MPs, Ontario MPs, where the bulk of them come from? Is the slippage of Mulcair in Quebec that Conrad Black is talking about a reality? And if so, what effect does that have on the overall picture? It's just very, very difficult to tell. And, no doubt about it, it looks very, very close right now from my perspective, and I think most British Columbians' perspective. It's hard to believe that we could have Mr. Harper again, but the numbers are there, and we're just going to have to wait.
Well, I've seen polls where the majority of Canadians say they hate Harper, but yet they also do other polls where they say, but who's the best prime minister? And he comes out on top.
Well, you know, this is not a new phenomenon, not in the hate department, but certainly in the strong dislike department. I can remember back in ancient times when I was involved in politics, and Dave Barrett was infinitely more popular than Bill Bennett. And Bill Bennett wasn't hated, but he wasn't liked. He certainly wasn't loved. Respected perhaps, but that was the most you could say. Dave was loved. He was a happy-go-lucky guy, and everybody related to him, and the polls reflected that all the time. And yet Bennett won, I think, 3 or 4 out of 4 with him. And it's not a new thing to have a leader unpopular as hell, but still preferred over the more popular one.
Also in Canada, you're not electing the prime minister, you're electing your local member of parliament. And even in my riding in Burnaby, which used to belong to Sven Robinson and now it's Kennedy Stewart, people really like the local MP, even though they may want a different federal leader than the NDPs.
Well, again, I get back to my old colleague Bill Bennett. He used to say, you can never beat a popular MLA. And he was very right. If you can get somebody that is popular in his constituency, he'll outride parties every time. And now, that doesn't happen right over the electoral map, of course. But usually you'll find, say, in British Columbia, sort of plucking numbers out of the air here, but you probably find 25 or 30, maybe even more, MLAs in British Columbia that wouldn't matter what the hell happens, they're going to get elected because the people like them. Now, it's kind of funny when you think about it, because the MLA doesn't do a damn thing except what he's told to do by the boss and all the rest of it. But be that as it may, they manage to maintain their popularity, stay in the community, and that sort of thing, and they're virtually undefeatable.
Diane Watts is running for the Conservatives in Surrey, and I noticed that's where they announced that the Conservative government would support light rail in Surrey, paying 1/3 of the bill.
Well, and that would be a logical place to do it. She's their star out here, and she's the person that they want to give the good news stuff to, and that's what they're doing. And that's rather common in elections, to sort of pick out your star attraction for the day, attractions, plural, for the days to come, and concentrate your good news on them. I certainly know as a former candidate, that could be annoying as hell if you're not one of the favorite candidates, but nevertheless, that's a very real thing, and it's a logical thing to do, because, as you say, it's a match play, not medal play here, and you want to get the most MLAs, and so you concentrate on the places you think can win, and you give the potential winners every opportunity to do just that.
The Conservatives refuse to do a national television debate, that is, do it on a major national television network. And it's really true. The debates have gone by, the Monk debate or the McLean's debate. They've slipped on by and really didn't get much public attention.
Well, I think that's always the case, Jim. You look back over the years, you remember moments in time and key moments in debates. But by and large, if you were to have them all played in front of you, let's say the last 5 or 10 years, 4 or 5 times, let's say, on the big screen, you'd look at them and say, "Oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah, I guess that did happen. I don't remember much about it at the time." You're looking for the critical moment, and you don't often get that. And the presidential debates in the United States are great examples of that. You can look back and you can see a few key ones, like Gerald Ford denying that Poland was under the Russian thumb, and you can see the Kennedy, Nixon, and so on. But by and large, if you were to replay all those debates, most people would fall asleep.
We'll have more with Rafe Mair right after the break.
Unbelievable harmonies, spectacular performance, Bird Dog and the Vintage Electric Band, the ultimate tribute to the Everly Brothers and Simon and Garfunkel in Oliver, October 2nd, in Kelowna, October 3rd. Buy online and save at ontourtickets.com. More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rafe Mair. Rafe, although you said this isn't your area of expertise, you still are very critical of the BC government for its number of, quote, deadly failures in the Ministry of Children and Families, where young people in their care continue to die. And now their latest excuse is, well, the people we contracted the services out to aren't doing their jobs.
Well, Jim, this is an interesting sort of a subject. I don't know the ministry specifically and closely, and the part that I did know about it is long, long ago. And in those days, it was in the hands of the eminent Grace McCarthy, and she probably was one of the last people that really ran a department and knew what the hell was going on a day-to-day basis. But what I can say is this: you cannot possibly have failure after failure after failure, year after year after year, without facing up to the fact that you have a failure. So now you've got to do something about it. And I haven't, frankly, heard anything out of the Premier to respond to the loans that are named the children's advocate. I haven't heard her to say anything to respond to the many reasonable and rational complaints and suggestions that she's made over the years. It's almost as if, that was a bad day yesterday, but tomorrow might be better. These are our kids, for goodness sake. This isn't a matter of a business going broke or a car crashing into a telephone pole. These are our children with long-standing consequences of what we do right now. And clearly, I can't give you the success story, Jim, but I can tell you this. Obviously, to any intelligent person, this whole system of the Clark government with respect to children has failed and has continued to fail.
Well, should they be contracting out services? How do you maintain any quality control if you do that?
Well, I suppose you have to do some of it. I just don't know. I'm not an expert in that field. But I do know that you cannot contract out services or do anything with children outside of their regular homes without there being problems develop that you're going to have to monitor and be very careful to monitor on a regular basis. And it's difficult. And I want to say this, I think that the people who work in that field have a hell of a job, and I wouldn't have it for $1 million. It's tough, emotional, and they can't help get swept up in themselves. And I know that when a child goes astray or dies or something, it has an enormous impact on the public servants involved and their families and all of that, which only to me fortifies the fact that we have not yet got a system that works. Now, if Ms. Clark can say to me, look, Nowhere in the world do we have such a system. I don't care if you go to 10 provinces, Great Britain, the United States, all the counties, etc. There just isn't such a system. It doesn't work, so all we can do is keep on muddling through. Well, that would be one thing, but I don't think that she can make that case, and I don't believe that people that are experts in that field would believe that case. I don't know what the solution is, but as a logical person of some past experience, I don't believe that you can't find a solution to a problem like this involving our kids.
And of course, there's that horrible case where a judge found the ministry at fault for returning a number of children back to a sexually abusive father.
Well, and I don't want to go overboard on that one. I mean, it's a terrible case. But these terrible cases do happen, and that doesn't excuse them. But what it does do is it sheds a little light. It shows a window. It says, wait a minute, if that is happening, if that kind of a horrendous thing can happen, are there slightly less horrendous but nevertheless very bad things happening right throughout the system? That's the kind of thing that's kind of a message telegraphed to you. I know in the Ministry of Health, you always had a horror story, and the opposition critic would virtually accuse you of murder in the House the following day. And those cases usually were very, very difficult cases and were one-offs and exceptions. But they almost invariably pointed to more problems and places that you should be looking. And that doesn't mean that just because it's a terribly bad case, you can write it off as a one-off. It probably isn't a one-off at all.
Minister Stephanie Cadieux, I think when I was watching her on television the other day, said these failures will continue. Well,
I don't know the context in which she said that, but there's no question about it. You're in a ministry that's bound to have failures. You don't have success stories come bouncing out of any children's ministry. That's true. But I've got to say this, that Minister Cadieux, as far as I'm concerned, ought to have resigned a long time ago and ought to do so now. Now, I understand she's a very nice, fine person and everybody likes her. The fact remains she's been a failure. She hasn't succeeded. And ministers are supposed to succeed. That's what being a minister is all about. And I know that you measure success in different ways, and with children it's pretty difficult because, as you pointed out, and we've been talking about, there are always very sad and very horrible stories come out of it. But still, you've got to measure success against what is reasonable. And I don't think any reasonable British Columbian would say that we have a modicum of success with kids in this province, and certainly have not had so since this government took office.
The minister has refused to answer any questions asking her if she should resign.
Well, that's to me, this is a part of modern government, Jim, that I just don't understand. It's something that was not part of my experience, and I just can't understand how it would happen. I hate this sort of, when I was bit, because that's a long time ago and different things prevail. But I can assure you that the government in which I served, the Premier would not permit for 1 second any of us not to stand up, defend ourselves, and answer all questions. That was part and parcel of what you had to do. And I think I've told you this story before of, as a Minister of Environment, having to go to a horrendous meeting in Smithers where they were out to kill me. They really and truly were. It was a terrible thing. And people said, well, how brave you were to go. Not at all. I went because that was part and parcel of being a minister in the Bill Bennett government. There was absolutely no allowance for silence or stonewalling or whatever it was. If that happened, a new minister was found.
Back to the federal election for a second. Do you think with the numbers being so close, it will encourage more people to get out to vote this time?
That's always an interesting question, isn't it? Sometimes it does. Sometimes, I know that sounds like hedging, but I can remember the first election that I ran in 1975 was supposed to be the most hot election that we'd had in British Columbia for God knows how long. I mean, the whole province was heated up. You were either an NDP or a Socrat, and everybody hated everybody else, and it was fuming, the whole thing. And if my recollection is correct, I think it was just over 1% more voted in 75 than voted in 72. So you just never do know of what's going to get people out. I will say this, that people have been inclined to be lazy in the past, and this election, because of the length of it, and because of the issues, and because of the personal issues, may get people inspired to get out and vote. We'll just have to see.
I think the cleverest ad I've seen so far is the NDP ad that parodies the conservative ad that made fun of Justin Trudeau, and instead they're saying Stephen Harper. He hasn't done a good job on creating jobs. He's been involved in all kinds of scandals. He just shouldn't keep the job anymore. He should be fired. Nice hair, though.
Well, some of the people that do those ads are brilliant, and I can remember a lot of them over the years with great pleasure and amusement. I don't know how much good or harm they do, but as I say, it takes a measure of genius to come up with some of those. And I think, frankly, going back, the conservative ad with respect to Trudeau, contrary to what I thought at the beginning, has played out very well. They've made that theme stick as much as you could expect it to.
And now, like I said, people are making fun of it, even if it's other parties.
Oh, of course, and that's the way things work, and it's good. It's part and parcel of the election, and it's probably the only part that's really fun.
Rafe, thank you very much for chatting with us.
Jim, always a great pleasure.
My guest has been Rafe Mair, former BC cabinet minister and Canada's longest-running #1 radio talk show host. You're listening to The Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be emailed to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on The Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.